A mixture of red dye and sweat trickled down her forehead, hovered on her eyebrows, poised to drizzle into her eyes. Soon to be blinded by runaway hair products, Roberta Jones Spivey could force nothing more than a mousy squeak from her throat. She was about to go deaf, too, from the hairdryer blasting her eardrums, and still she couldn't open her mouth wide enough to shriek. Any moment now, her hair would spontaneously combust. They'd smell the smoke first, then the aroma of singed hair, but by the time any of the umpteen stylists scurrying about the headhunter's main salon came to her rescue, she'd be bald, if not charred to a briquette. Help me before my demise becomes a 15-second slot on a tabloid show. Now was not the time for a panic attack. Drip, 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 from her eyebrows to her eyelashes. In a last-ditch effort to save herself, she squeezed her eyes shut. Burning tears leaked out to mingle with the caustic fluids. She clamped onto the chair's arms, a death grip, terrified that if she touched the stuff, she'd end up rubbing her flesh off, too. Someone, please, notice me. The bowl of the dryer was suddenly jerked up, cool air from the overhead fans wafting across her scalp. "Bobbie, honey, why didn't you tell me the color was running?" Mimi was the only person who'd ever called her Bobbie. Roberta dragged in a breath of air to explain, then collapsed in a spasm of coughing as the stench of chemicals, dyes, perm solution, and her own terrified sweat swooped down her throat. Mimi's shoes click-clacked away, then back again. "Here, drink this." Water had never tasted so good. All Roberta had wanted was a new look. Okay, so she needed a new life, too. Instead, she'd almost died, and her heart was still pounding like the Pony Express. She handed the empty paper cup back to Mimi, who crumpled it, executed a perfect free throw into the trash can, then tugged at a few squishy locks on Roberta's head and pronounced, "You're cooked." Roberta was cooked all right. Roasted, basted, filleted, flambéed, and limp as a wet noodle to boot. Residual quivers made her knees wobble as she tried to stand up. Mimi put a hand beneath her elbow. "Bobbie, honey, you okay?" "I'm fine." Well, except that Warren had walked out on her 3 weeks, 6 days, and 7 hours ago, on April 18th, 3 days after tax day, 2 days after he'd left for his little mission up north, in Cottonmouth, California. He dumped her with nothing more than a phone call telling her he wasn't coming back. Ever. Roberta blew out a breath. "Yeah, Mimi, I'm just fine." "Good. For a minute there under the dryer, you looked a little panicky." Mimi patted her arm and led her to the rinse bowl. "I didn't want to bother you while you were busy." Her? Panic? Just because her husband of 15 years had left her for his long-lost, recently located through the internet high school sweetheart? The love of his life? The teenage bimbo who'd broken his heart, then disappeared off the face of the earth, or at least left the San Francisco Bay Area for parts unknown. Cookie. What kind of name was that anyway? It made her think of some hairy blue monster on a morning kids show. Warren was bound to see he'd made a mistake. Okay, so she'd made a mistake too, by actually helping him search the net, and mailing the hundreds of letters, because he was nervous about calling all those women, looking for the right one, and letting him drive to Cottonmouth all alone that fateful weekend. She'd only wanted to help him solve his problem, because his problem was her problem. Mimi pushed her head back into the bowl and began rinsing with warm water. Roberta closed her eyes. The water turned off. The soothing scent of citrus conditioner replaced the stinging dye in her nostrils, and gentle fingers massaged her scalp. "Bobbie, honey, you're tense. Is work getting to you?" "No, it's fine." Except for those dreaded whispers of restatement trickling out of the audit committee, and her boss, Mr. Winkleman's finger pointing firmly in her direction as director of accounting. But she wasn't worried. She knew every balance, every detail inside and out. Her numbers were solid. She gave herself up to the finger pads working her scalp and the little knots at the base of her skull. Her breathing relaxed. The whir of her mind's gears slowed. Ah,